These reports of mind-numbing violence against our most vulnerable are of just the last few days. If cold numbers tell the story better, here they are. The National Crime Records Bureau data will tell you child rapes are up by 82%. Then there is the entire gamut of child sexual abuse. Today we look at what we need to know to make our homes, schools, the internet and public places safer for our children. How child sexual abuse material finds its way onto the internet and how you can flag it down. How pedophiles groom children for sexual abuse and what parents need to know. Should an adult survivor of child sexual abuse be allowed to proceed legally against her abuser? A survivor makes her case. It's Tuesday, April 24th.
My name is Sweetie. I'm 10 years old. I live in the Philippines. Every day, I have to sit in front of the webcam and talk to men, just like tens of thousands of other kids.
Across Europe, Australia, US and Canada, pedophiles are paying middlemen or facilitators from impoverished parts of Philippines and Thailand to sexually abuse children, including babies, and directing the act through online streaming services sitting in their homes. In 2017, a Danish court convicted a 70-year-old man for ordering the rape and sexual assault of Filipino children to be broadcast online.
Webcam child sexual exploitation became sort of like, I've heard it being described as a cottage industry. Typically it started with one family who I think had a young daughter whom they would stream on a webcam, and then people would pay via Bitcoin or some sort of online transfer. Basically they would live chat with the child and ask her to do a lot of basically perform certain sexual activities for them. Soon everybody realized that this family was earning a lot of money to this, and then it became a real problem for the region. So this is something that comes in along with the technology that makes this possible. So when the technology to makes it possible come in, we'll really have to be prepared that there can be a case like this.
While there has been no documented case of webcam sex tourism in India, there has been a sharp spike in child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, online.
As the internet grows and expands, we only see this is increasing. If you look at our own NCRB data, there has been a 140% increase in the number of cases that are booked under the sections of child pornography and pornography in the law. Child sexual abuse material would be any material that's available online which shows children in a sexually exploited form and which has a sexual intent. So to give you an example, if there is erotic posing of a child, or there is any kind of sexual act that you're making the child do or you're doing to the child, all of that comes under child sexual abuse material on the internet. And material also could mean words and stories and sort of erotica written around children.
Aramb India runs the hotline that helps internet users in India flag and report any child sexual abuse material they come across. Aramb works in partnership with UK-based Internet Watch Foundation. The IWF is the most successful hotline in the world in removing child pornography.
You're a user, right? You stumble upon an image which you think has child sexual abuse imagery. So what you have to do is you have to go to arambindia.org/report. There are two links. One is in English and the other is in Hindi. Whichever language you're comfortable with, you have to click that link. It will take you to a reporting page. The reporting page is basically like a 5-step form. It's like signing up for the email or something. It's as simple. So you can choose to report the URL in either anonymously, or if you want to know what exactly happened to the URL, you have to just give in your name and your email ID, and they'll send you reports as to what happened to it. And you should have a URL to report. So once you have the URL, then you either report it anonymously or giving your name, and then it's submitted. So when you report it, it goes to our partners IWF, who are based in the UK. IWF is basically 3 categories of in which they divide the content that can be blocked. As soon as it's identified that the report contains child sexual abuse imagery, it's put onto a blocking list. This blocking list is subscribed to by at least close to around like 100 or 120 of the biggest tech companies in the world. So that includes Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So basically, as soon as the URL, or like even ISPs like Vodafone, Telenor, British Telecom, so the moment the URL that you've reported features on the blocking list, your immediate access to the content is prevented.
There was one report that was made in India by the Indian portal. It took the IWF analysts to a Russian cyber locker which had more than 200 URLs that contained videos and images of children as young as 6 months in the most severe forms of sexual abuse, which is penetrative sexual assault, and these children were of various ethnicities. Now, although the report was made in India, this was available in the Russian cyber locker. So the IWF analyst had to notify the Russian hotline, which happened in 1 hour and 7 minutes, and then subsequently in 24 hours, these images were taken down off the internet. And I think that is India's contribution to reducing this menace on the internet. So that's why there has to be a networking and a collaborative approach when we are looking at this issue.
The Supreme Court is currently hearing a matter on the uploading and sharing of child sexual abuse material and rape videos, and how technology majors like Google and Facebook are dealing with such content on their platforms. In a majority of cases of child sexual abuse, the abuser is known to the victim. Grooming is the process by which the predator systematically gains the trust of the potential child victim, sometimes even the child's family. Identifying the victim.
I was 7 when I was sexually abused. My abuser was my uncle. By the time I was 11 or 12, he gang raped me, he got people home and they had sex with me one after the other.
At the time of puberty, you start developing breasts and then you start wearing bras, and almost like a very common thing that, okay, so the teachers would come and feel up your back under the pretext of, patting you, and they will touch you in a way which makes you really uncomfortable. And the same teacher who would do it to me would, there were girls talking about it, and I heard that one teacher said that if you want to complain about it, you have to give it in writing. And I'm talking about 30 years back. So there was no concept of, there was no POCSO, there was no policy, there was no child-friendly practices, there was no child sexual abuse as a term only was not known.
Gaining trust of the victim.
If they have to gain the trust of the child and ensure that the child doesn't speak out to anyone else, they need to gain the trust of the family as well. It's a pattern that predators usually follow, and if we don't see that pattern and if we don't educate our children, then we are actually doing a great disservice. So you might educate your child about good touch, bad touch, or rather safe touch and unsafe touch, but if you don't tell your child that safe touch and unsafe touch could also be from these respectable people in our family also, then you have done half your work. You have not done your work completely.
Grooming is a very real thing that happens, and that is what makes it possible for an abuser to abuse a kid in a family setting or a school setting over a sustained period of time, because they win the trust of the kid, they win the trust of the parents, and they win or if it happens in a school, they enjoy a position of trust in the school. And grooming is a process which desensitizes the kid to, in a way disempowers the child and make sure that it is not reported, and if it's reported, the child would not be believed. It's very intimidating. Can you picture like a 6-year or a 3-year or a 5-year-old and this full grown adult, if he is taking you to the loo and undressing you or touching your penis or touching your vagina or slipping his hands under or taking off his clothes in front of you, I mean it's too shocking and too intimidating a thing. You don't know how to describe it. And if the message is only nobody should touch your private parts, and if he's not touched the child's private part, what is the child supposed to say? He'll just start avoiding going to the loo, then he'll start avoiding going for maths tuitions if it's a maths teacher. the child will stop going to the play period, and then the parents, children always try to tell us indirectly,
creating secrecy around the relationship.
It is a pattern where the predator either uses love as a shield, saying that, you know what, this is a secret and I love you so much, and this is our little secret and we will do this together, aren't you enjoying it, and make the victim feel like the victim, he or she or Z, is a play, a party to the whole thing.
Initiating sexual contact.
They'll just touch you so-called harmlessly, or just brush against you first, and you're like, okay, and otherwise this is a good teacher, cool teacher. Then slowly you'll do something more and something more like that. So before you know it, you're in a situation where you feel like you're trapped and you can't say no to abuse, as if you took part in it, you participated in it, you gave your consent, or you were okay with it.
Maintaining control over the child.
I firmly believe that how disclosure is handled goes a long way to ensure whether the child will have long-term impact of the abuse or not. You're present, you believe the child, you are sure that you give the message to the child that it's never his or her fault. You make sure that the child will be safe, and you also kind of are present to what the child is going through.
Trust your child. Don't ever tell your child that, did this happen really? Did this happen? Oh really? Oh, I find it a little difficult to digest. Never use any negation with the child. There will be people who will tell you that children usually make up these stories. No one makes up these stories when it comes to issues of child sexual abuse. So please trust your child completely, without any bias.
Child molesters are not these monsters that are lurking in the bushes. They are people within our family, within our friend circle. Most child molesters are repeat offenders. They can get away with it once, they will do it again. When you're being abused as a child, the power differential is like this. It's like this. The perpetrator is way up there and the child is way down here. As you grow older, this power differential kind of gets smaller and smaller. If we're given the chance of the adult survivor to be able to file a complaint, maybe we can stop further molestation. The person who went on to abuse other children in our family, he knows he is not touchable by the law right now. This person who abused me, to everybody else, to my other cousins, if I ask them now, they're like, well, we thought he was always partial to you. He was always, giving you gifts, and you were special to him. So we were jealous of that special attention you got from him. So everybody is thinking he is being good to you, not realizing that the goodness is only hiding something quite devious. Once I spoke about my child abuse, suddenly people are starting to remember. Didn't make sense to them. For example, even his wife said, oh, I used to find him next to your bed at night. But he said you were having nightmares and he got up to comfort you. You suddenly realize, well, if he did it to me, he could be doing it to other children. About that time, my niece was born, and suddenly I started to worry that these younger children who are now being born into the family could then be at risk. I didn't realize that what I'd suffered as a child was child abuse till I came to Canada, and I was watching a TV program, and suddenly it all fell into place. So in India, at the time that I was growing up, no one quite told me that there was something called child abuse. It is not clear whether under POCSO, adult survivors can file complaints. My job is done if I start the debate and if people start talking about it.
Think about it. We'll be back tomorrow.